Well, good morning and welcome everyone. My name's Suzanne Morrison. I work in the post-secondary counseling office at Aspen High School. And on behalf of the Colorado Western Slope College Fair, thank you so much for being here this morning. I have the honor of introducing today's panelists. We have Harry Herbert from Franklin University in Switzerland. We have Jacqueline Oberdorster, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from the American University in Paris. And we may be joined by Will Abraham from Goldsmiths University of London. The way the format will work today is our panelists will present for approximately 30 minutes, and then following that, we'll have 15 minutes of questions and answers where you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. So at this time, I'll turn it over to our panelists.
Okay, so thank you so much for being here. We're super excited to meet with you. Bummed we couldn't do it in person. Really looking forward to going to Aspen for the first time, but I'm in Denver right now, so I'll settle for Denver. But yeah, so we're here to talk about the benefits of going to school abroad, what it could mean for your career, personal growth, just sort of everything related to it. And then we also have a few slides just to talk a bit about our own particular universities. And all of us, and hopefully Will is able to join us, will also be available via Zoom for the rest of the day. So if you ever wanted to meet up with us and talk about it a little bit more, we're happy to help. She just presented us. So this is just our name, so we don't really need to go over this one again. So I'm just going to talk more generally about studying abroad in France before we talk about AUP specifically. So France is the #1 study abroad destination in the world. Very, very student friendly, very welcoming to students. So it's a really great experience to kind of get outside your comfort zone and, experience a new culture, experience a new language, a new style, a new way of thinking. Different countries interact with the world in different ways, right? So you kind of get out of that American bubble and learn maybe how some other countries operate. But some of the benefits, so really cheap to get around. I mean, of course, you'll hear this from any university that is in Europe, but really easy to get around. We also offer what's called the Caf Assistance. So basically it's like a rent discount. So that's pretty nice too. Rent in Paris, well, it can be expensive, but it's not as crazy as some other major European cities. So it could definitely be a bit of an affordable option. Student discounts also just come with the territory. So you don't have to be an EU citizen to take advantage of the free museums if you're under the age of 25 and you have your student visa. We have discounts at restaurants all over the city. So again, it can still really be like a student and budget friendly to be there. A common question we get is, can I stay in Paris after I graduate? So graduating with a bachelor's degree in France automatically makes you eligible for a 1-year work visa. So you could stay in France post-graduation. If you go for a graduate degree in France, it's a 3-year work visa. And both are eligible for renewal. So at AUP, for instance, our Student Immigration Services Office can work with you even after you graduate to help you navigate sort of that visa paperwork and what it would be like to extend that visa and stay in Paris long term. So your French student visa also, so you don't have to wait until after you graduate to work in France. French internships are also plentiful. There are a lot of English language companies moving over to France in these past couple of years, which means we have more opportunities than ever. English speakers are very highly valued in France. So AUP students in particular, very desirable. We have I'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk about the AUP specific slide, but French internships are also paid, which is another great opportunity you don't always get in the US. So you could also take internships for credit, right? So maybe you want to take 3 classes a semester instead of 4, and then you have a little more time to free up your schedule to be able to travel to and from your internship. So to be able to have those opportunities to really enhance you're already going to be abroad, but now you're working abroad. I mean, that's really going to set you apart when you go apply either to grad school or jobs post-graduation. And about half of our internships do lead to full-time job offers post-graduation. So again, just making those connections early, very, very important. As I said, English language speakers highly valued in France. And then, yeah, our location makes it really easy to get around. So I will let Harry take it from here.
Thank you very much. Yes, so Switzerland is a wonderful place to be, especially when you're looking at where you're going to be studying and living. It is in the heart of Europe, which gives us wonderful access to being able to travel all around the continent, and as well as the UK and other places. As my colleague had mentioned, that it is very inexpensive to travel out there. For example, to fly from Switzerland to, for example, Paris for the weekend is only about $50 or $60 for a plane ticket. So it's really simple to get around. Also, Eurail passes or Swiss train passes are fairly inexpensive as well, that allow you for lots of wonderful access for traveling. Now, the interesting thing about Switzerland is that it does have a very unique living style because it has such really interesting cultural influences. So Switzerland has sort of three primary regions separated by the influences of the surrounding countries. That's going to be the French side on the west, the northern and eastern side influenced by German culture, and the southern side where we are is very much influenced by Italian culture. So you get a really cool experience of being able to have multiple different languages within a fairly small country. It only takes about 2 hours by train to get from the northern to southern tip of the country. But it gives you lots of wonderful opportunities for exploring new cuisines, new cultures, and all sorts of things. The benefit of being in a place like Switzerland is, although you have these primary languages in each part of the region, it is very well known throughout the world for its people speaking multiple different languages, including English. So English is very well spoken in the country, and you do not have to have a significant language barrier in order to attend university in Switzerland. The other really interesting thing is that it is separated into what are called cantons. There are 26 of them. We can think of these as similar to what the states are in the US. So each canton has its own way of doing things, its own influence, and sort of within a federal system in Switzerland. Now, we are able to have, in my opinion, some of the best chocolate in the world. So fondue is also very popular there in Switzerland. One interesting fun fact is that they take their fondue seriously. You cannot get it by yourself. You have to at least bring one friend. So it's really one of those interesting things out there that the food is just to die for. It's incredible. It is basically one of the things you'll get to know about the Swiss is that they have very strong regulations for things. They're very rules oriented as a people. And one of the things that is a benefit of that is, of course, the food has a very high minimum quality standard for the country. So that means you're going to have lots of really cool, I'm ruined on Italian food in the US, for example, just because it's so good in the canton of Ticino where our university is located. Switzerland is also continuously ranked in the world as being the safest country, if not one of them, if it's not the top. So you have really cool opportunities to really go explore without really having to worry so much for your own personal safety. They really do take care of each other out there. It's also one of the cleanest countries in the world. You're going to be super excited to see that they take care of what they have there. It's also very beautiful in terms of its layout and where we're located. So we have everything from the Swiss Alps to multiple different lakes across the country. So you have everything that you want. And especially coming from a place like Colorado, if you're interested in doing skiing and snowboarding, our university is only about 45 minutes from the Alps. So within the hour in your student ID, having a discounted rail and ski pass. So it is a very wonderful place to be. I'm going to sort of leave it there so we can talk about the specific universities. But if you have any specific questions about the country, I'd be happy to talk about it.
Okay, and so Franklin and AUP are both unique in the fact that we are American universities abroad. So it's going to be a little bit different. If you are looking internationally, you'll definitely, this is a distinction that I think is important to make. There are benefits, I would say, and cons to both, right? Whether you're going to be in the French or Swiss system, or you're going to be in an American system. I would say some of the benefits of being in an American system is the flexibility of the curriculum. So a lot of schools, for example, in the UK, they're 3-year programs. You have to know exactly what you want to do when you get in. You can't really change your mind. So one of the pros to that is, it's going to be cheaper. You're going to be done sooner and get out in the workforce sooner. But for students who maybe are still deciding, or they want that additional academic support, that is the true hallmark of an American style education. You get that at an American university abroad. So with us, we are, degrees are accredited in the US. So that means you can go to grad school in the US, you can go to grad school in France and Switzerland, abroad, anywhere you want, and you can be employed anywhere. So it's recognized all over the world. We also tend to have incredibly diverse student bodies. So we at AUP, for example, of our 1,000 students, about half come from the United States, 30% from Europe, 20% from the rest of the world. So, while we do have a good chunk from the United States, that means the other half come from 99 different countries. Class sizes are going to be small, generally American universities abroad too. So I think one of the great things too is that other students are attracted, international students are attracted to American universities abroad because they want to share a classroom with you. They are very interested in your perspective as an American. They don't necessarily get to hear that either. So not only are you learning from them, but you have people there that are very eager to learn from you too. So it's a really interesting kind of dynamic in the classroom. And then everything's really done through a global context. So the classes are going to have a very international approach to them too. If you think about studying something like climate change in the US, where maybe there's a debate involved or there's some questions still. If studying climate change in France, that's just climate change is a given, right? It's a fact, it's science, that's established, you move on, right? So it's going to be a different experience. So also, really important to note, of course, the classes are in English. I don't think any of us require that you know our language before you come in, right? So even if you haven't taken French or German or, Italian, you can still go to an American university abroad. And then you have that opportunity to take those languages. And studying French in France is going to be very different than studying French in the US, right? You're going to be able to practice it all the time. You're going to be able to really get to a different level than you would be able to if you stayed in the US or if you just studied abroad for a semester, right? Strong campus support. So that is actually something that is pretty unique to American universities. A lot of UK and other international universities are almost more like commuter campuses, right? Everyone's kind of got their core group of friends. They're just living at home and they go to school just to go to your classes and then they go home at night. So it's kind of that more American style where you have the social aspect of college too. So if that is something that you're looking for, that's something you'll find at an American university abroad. And then the academic support. So again, if you're in, let's say you go to the Sorbonne in Paris, great, a very prestigious university, shorter programs, but then you're surrounded by people who have been preparing for that particular program all throughout high school, right? Because it operates so differently in France or in Europe. So they don't necessarily have that type of academic support, the sort of faculty availability that again has just become the hallmark of an American style education, as well as just the flexibility to change your mind and to seek guidance from your professors and your advisors. So I think that's a really nice benefit too, to be in an American school abroad. And then of course, active student life, right? So we're just so many clubs and organizations, so many ways to get to know each other. And then we all will have because our student body is so diverse and international, we have extremely strong global network of alum. So I know at AUP, we have 20,000 alum, 140 something different countries. So, if you really are looking to have that global aspect to your career later on, it's only going to do you a world of good to start building that global network even earlier, instead of just waiting until, the one semester of your junior year or waiting until after you graduate. So that's kind of, let's say, what American universities abroad are. And then Harry, do you want to talk about this slide a little bit?
Sure thing, yes. So on top of the US experience abroad, you also have the benefit of an international degree, being able to pretty much get a job anywhere in the world that you'd like. In terms of the primary differences between the US style of education and the European style of education, for example, and most countries outside of the US, I think, The primary difference being is that, as Jacqueline said earlier, it's basically a 3-year degree plan focused specifically in one particular area. So whether that's history or biology, you're basically applying to that program directly, and you are focused intently on that particular program for your 3-year degree. If you want to change majors, it can be a bit of a challenge. You typically would have to reapply to the university basically as a new student, and transfer credits like that can be a bit of a challenge if you're trying to switch programs because it's such a focused track. And the US style, of course, is very much the American Liberal Arts Foundation with a 4-year degree plan. So the benefit of an international degree, however, is that it allows you lots of flexibility in terms of becoming basically a professional world traveler. So everything that you are focusing on is pretty much international, intercultural, and global in its scope. Now, the other primary difference is, let's say for those of you students who are interested in going to law school or medical school, well, that's also done very differently. Basically, those programs are done in most countries outside of the US directly after high school. So you apply basically to medical school directly after you graduate high school, and then you would do a 5-year degree plan doing that particular area. The benefit of that, of course, is that you're able to get through the program much more quickly than the US style, which is basically the 4-year degree plan for your bachelor's, and then applying for medical school, which can be 4 years of medical school plus additional years of training after that for whatever specialty you might have. And that's just one example. One thing to consider also, if you're interested in trying to study medicine abroad, is that you may or may not be able to come back to the US with that certification to be able to practice that profession. So do some research to look and see specifically what your areas of interest are. The American universities abroad, of course, can provide you with that US diploma as well, so that you can come back to the US and then study those programs specifically. But also do specific research too, because some countries, like Switzerland, for example, does not have a centralized application. So what we would consider something like the common application that encompasses lots of different schools. You can basically just submit one application to many different types of institutions. Many other countries don't have that. So you basically have to do specific research and apply to a particular institution. So you want to do a lot of studying as to what your specific interests are, what programs that those particular universities have, and then what their specific application requirements will be. There are also many situations where a different country might have a language requirement. So for example, if you're applying to the University of Zurich, you will likely have to be able to speak fluent German. Now, some countries and some universities will have grace periods where you'll have a couple of months or perhaps even a full term to be able to learn the language, where they'll give you a bit of an opportunity, but others will say, no, you have to have a language proficiency before you're accepted. Now, the other really cool thing about studying in different countries is that you really get awesome opportunities to engage with people from all over the globe. You get to see how what you're studying in the classroom really takes place in the world at large. And you really get awesome opportunities to develop your resume and work experience such that you can qualify for top programs, both academically and professionally, all over the place. You become very independent and very strong at being able to navigate new experiences and also challenging experiences. You'll be able to say, well, I am such a good traveler, I can go to a new place in the world that I've never been to before, and within a short period of time be able to navigate my way around and accomplish the goals that I'm setting out to do. So the other really big benefit of other international degrees is the fact that most other countries have, for example, highly subsidized public universities. So for example, in Switzerland, your tuition costs are going to be somewhere around 5,000 Swiss francs per year. And so scholarships are a different thing out there because most of those particular schools will be less expensive and don't really have to have scholarships to help basically cover most of the costs. So do some research again on what specific universities offer, as well as different countries' systems, so that you can be a little bit more familiar with their programs and what they offer. So I think that that'll give you a pretty good overview of the benefits of traveling abroad, as well as some of the differences that might have different countries in terms of opportunities. So thank you for listening.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit now specifically about AUP. So we are located, we're an American University abroad. We are located right in the 7th arrondissement, which is right by the Eiffel Tower, as you can see from this picture. As I mentioned before, incredibly diverse student body. Half come from the US, but half come from the rest of the world. All of our classes are in English. You do not have to take any French in order to apply. We have what we call a global liberal arts curriculum. So again, you'll find this at American universities abroad, where there's sort of an international perspective built into your coursework. So one of that would be, taking a year of French as a part of that, but then also looking at specific subjects through a more international lens. I think the politics classes particularly are going to be very interesting, because you could be in a class talking about women leadership, right? And you could be in a classroom with someone who comes from a country where women can't even drive, but then also with someone who has a woman as a prime minister, right? So you're just going to get all these really interesting views in one small kind of group setting and be able to discuss it at a level you would not be able to if you had stayed in the US. As far as programs at AUP, we definitely have some strengths, and then we have some things that we just don't do. So strengths are going to be anything in the humanities and the social sciences. So like art history, literature, creative writing, French, film, those are really great. But the social sciences, anything with the word international in it. So like international business, international politics. We have a lot of students who want to pursue international relations, and that falls within our international comparative politics major. Global communications, by far one of our biggest, most successful programs. We have a lot of students too that are pursuing like fashion at AUP. So not fashion in the sense of like fashion design, but more like fashion PR, fashion communications, fashion journalism. And when I talk about the internships, I'll talk a little bit about some of those fashion ones because they're ridiculous. And then we do have a growing environmental science program, growing psychology program, but that is about as sciencey as we get at AUP. So if you are looking for like pre-med or engineering, we don't offer those courses. So if you do want to do that, of course, you can just come study abroad with us for a while if you end up somewhere else, but we just kind of like to be upfront about that. So I'll talk about internships now. As I mentioned before, they are paid in France. Almost all students do some sort of internship while they're with us. Our career office, extremely supportive, helpful. They help you with your interview skills. They help you with the skill of also finding a job. So it's not necessarily here's your job listings, go at it, but they kind of help you hone those skills so that you can find those jobs that are more tailored to what you are able to offer and what you're looking for. They help you with your resume in English and in French, which I think is a pretty unique, because French resumes are completely different than the American ones. But students are interning at like the US Embassy in France, at Paris Vogue, Chanel, Dior, the BBC, the Musée d'Orsay, France 24. I mean, just really UNESCO, the OECD, right? There's a lot of world headquarters of world organizations that are located nearby in Paris. So really fantastic opportunities. And then I'll talk about our study trips a little bit too. So of course, students, everyone that is here is probably at this session right now because you love traveling, right? You really just want to get out of that American bubble. So we have lots of trips available that are linked to the curriculum. So they're called study trips. And we offer about 40 a semester. They're incredibly popular. Anybody can take them. So we have, creative writing goes to study Shakespeare at the Globe Theatre in London. Art history goes down to Venice. International marketing goes to Iceland for the week to study branding and tourism. Sustainable development, nonprofits, they go to India for 3 weeks. Journalism goes to the Al Jazeera studios in Qatar. So you've got really incredible travel opportunities just embedded within the curriculum. And then also some more locally based ones too. Like there's a food anthropology course that gets to travel down to like a cheese farm, which I think is so much fun. So you have those opportunities too. And then just for the sake of time, I'll talk a little bit about student life. So we do have housing at AUP. So all of our incoming students are required to use our housing. It's all located within the city of Paris. We don't have a meal plan. But all of our housing have full kitchens. So you will be cooking your own meals. Let's see what else. Student life, definitely have clubs and organizations. One of my favorite things about American universities abroad is in terms of this realm, they don't try to be, I think, like American universities in the US. Like AUP doesn't try to be all things for all people, right? Like you'll have a lab that like no matter what it is that you're looking for, they happen to have it. Like we are not one of those universities. We very much know who we are. So we say that our students tend to be a little more dinner party than frat party, right? So we don't have like the tailgating and the Greek life and the football. Like that's really not our students' thing. A lot of our clubs and organizations revolve around like food and wine, fashion, business, politics, service, diversity and culture. Like they're all kind of more in that realm. And then I'll just finish up really quickly, talk about the application process and financial aid. So we are on the Common App, which makes it super easy. So you don't have to worry about navigating a foreign application system. We practice that holistic admissions approach. So this is also something that you'll probably find in a lot of American universities abroad don't necessarily have, where you have to have a certain amount of APs, or we're test optional, right? You don't have to have your ACT or SAT. We don't have to have a certain number of years of math or English. We kind of look at everything in context. We want to say that you're taking a rigorous curriculum, of course, but we also are really focused on finding fits that will be successful at AUP. So generally that means students that tend to be a bit more independent, a bit more mature, they're, curious and adventurous. And again, just looking to get outside of that American bubble, right? Those are the students that really will take advantage of everything that AUP has to offer. Cost of attendance. So I would say this is probably one of the cons of an American university abroad is it is an American price tag. So we're total cost of attendance, maybe a little over 60,000 in US dollars per year. That includes your tuition, your housing, your books, your plane tickets, groceries, travel expenses, all of that. We are on the FAFSA, so you can add AUP to it. We offer both merit-based and need-based aid. So that can start to bring that cost down. So more similar to like a scholarship system that you would see in the US. Okay.
Do you mind if I ask you one question before we
Yeah,
move
absolutely.
on? I was just wondering, in terms of your art history, especially, like how do you take advantage of being in Paris and like all the history that you have there? And are there like, opportunities within your classes to kind of get out in Paris and experience everything firsthand?
Yeah. So one of my favorite classes is called Paris Through Its Museums. So you're literally out in a different museum every day instead of the classroom. So that would be, it's actually one of our global communications courses, but art history students can of course take advantage of that. That class is really interesting because they look at this idea of the museum as the medium rather than the individual pieces of artwork. So you're really looking at the curator's intention. When they choose these pieces of artwork, what are they trying to say about society? It's a really, really interesting class. We also have Paris through its photography, Paris through its architecture. So you're definitely getting out. If you're taking like a film class, you'll definitely be, going out to some, French New Wave film screening, with your professor and students and classmates. So you're definitely out in the city a lot. I mean, again, we're very centrally located, so it's very easy to get around and do activities in Paris. So it's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of piggyback off of that, I think that if you really want to get the full in-depth experience with art and art history, that Europe is the place to be for all of that. So you absolutely have wonderful opportunities to see the Louvre, to see literal castles, and really get out to see these historic places and get to experience them firsthand rather than just seeing them in your classroom. So I think it really enhances the experience all around. And if it's something that you're looking at studying that's perhaps outside of a particular country, it's really easy to travel around there. So you can just hop on a train or a quick regional airline for a very inexpensive price. So for Franklin University, Switzerland, I'll just echo pretty much almost everything that Jacqueline said about an American university abroad. We are also on the Common Application. We also have merit scholarships. The FAFSA does apply, need-based assistance through the university. Typically, when looking at cost with many students coming from the US, the way I like to consider it is, if you are looking at any pretty much out-of-state public schools or private schools in the States, our costs are going to be very similar, if not even less than many. So for example, the total cost of attendance at Franklin is right around 70,000 US, but that includes 45,000 US tuition per year, as well as international flights and all the rest of it. We do have on-campus housing, so a very rare thing in the European context. Basically, we have 8 residence halls on campus and are in the process of constructing another one. These are all apartments. So the European Europeans don't know how to make US dorms, and we very much thank them for that. So in which case you're never really going to see an experience where you have 60 people sharing a communal bathroom for your hall. These are all going to have private bathrooms and kitchens. We do have 2 dining halls on our campus, which means that freshmen are required to have a meal plan. You can continue having that meal plan throughout all 4 years, but we also have reduced meal plan options available as you go through your academic program at Franklin. Now, of course, our primary focus is going to be the 4-year American bachelor's degree experience. We also have several different master's programs on campus, but we also have flexible options. So perhaps you don't want to spend all 4 years abroad. Well, to give you an example as to some of those flexible options, we have highlighted here our program in partnership with Emerson College in Boston. We have several partnerships in the with universities across the United States, but this is just one highlighted example where, for example, you could do a 2+2, so 2 years at Franklin, graduating with your associates, and then 2 years at Emerson, graduating with your bachelor's. You've already been accepted to that 2+2 program if you apply for that, so you don't have to reapply or anything like that. You basically transition after your sophomore year and then begin your remaining 2 years in Boston. We also have several different 3+1 programs where basically you could do a 3-year accelerated bachelor's at Franklin and then a 1-year master's in several different programs. We also offer the opportunity to study abroad for a shorter period of time. So let's say you choose to go to a different university that's based in the United States. Well, you can still study abroad at Franklin for a semester or a year, and that American accreditation really helps transfer those credits back to your home institution very much one-to-one. We have over 20 different majors. These are primarily focused in the humanities and the social sciences, but we do have some new programs that are tracks supported by the university that will support pre-med and pre-law interested students. So if you're interested, you could pursue those programs at Franklin, get your bachelor's degree, and then basically apply for medical school and law school back in the United States. But our students qualify for top programs for graduate school as well as top organizations all across the globe. We are accredited both in the US and in Switzerland, which means that when you graduate, your degree is US and Swiss. So there's not too many countries that are going to basically not recognize one of those particular degrees. We have approximately 400 students on campus. These are half coming from North America and the other half come from about 60 other countries. So very much like American University in Paris and several other American universities, wildly international, although smaller in number than your traditional US institution. We're not going to be able to support 40,000 people for a football game every Saturday, but that's okay. That's not really what our universities are about. The other interesting thing about the US style of education is, of course, you can do a double major or perhaps study a language simultaneously as you're pursuing your area of focus. The key feature about Franklin, however, this is the most exciting part, is that we actually require all of our students to travel internationally every semester. Built into the program, so we're on the same American academic calendar that you'd see at any other US institution, but one of your 5 courses per semester is called an academic travel class. This is including 2 weeks of travel within that course to a different country to study that subject with your faculty and your classmates. So how that would work specifically, you have your 5 courses per term. The other 4 classes will take a break halfway through the semester, and then you and your professor and your classmates will then travel to that particular country of that area of interest for that course, and then study there for 2 weeks, and then you will return to campus to resume the classes as normal to finish out the term. The costs associated with those travel experiences are covered in tuition. So that $45,000 I told you earlier is very different than your traditional $45,000. That covers the cost of travel, accommodation, and the experiences within those programs. There are about 20 different academic travel courses offered per term, so you have lots of different options to choose from. And not only are they designed and led by the faculty, they're also non-major specific, which means that one semester you can take the environmental science class that goes to study human impact on the environment in Iceland, and then the following semester go to study history in Rome, and then maybe go to South Korea the next term, and then the next go to study business in London. So lots of really wonderful opportunities that are built into the program so that you can truly study in different places. So study abroad means something a little bit different to us. Now, that said, basically, when you apply on the Common Application, you are simultaneously reviewed for both admission and scholarship. So there's no separate application between those. We all, once again, accept the FAFSA and have need-based assistance. So it's really, it helps to bring down the cost very, very significantly. So that's just a brief introduction. Lugano itself is one of the financial capitals of Switzerland, which is itself a financial capital of the world. Studying in Switzerland gives you really wonderful opportunities to develop your academic interests and professional interests very much experientially. So for those of you interested in international business, banking, and finance or economics, you could perhaps go to do an internship at a local Swiss bank and then have a wonderful resume building experience there. But for those of you interested in politics and history, well, this is the country where other countries go to settle the differences on the global stage. So there's no better place, in my opinion, to be. For example, one of the popular programs in terms of academic travel goes to the UN in Geneva, where many of our faculty have worked professionally. So you're very literally rubbing elbows with world leaders. And that's one of the big benefits of going to an American university abroad, is that you're really getting to develop those experiences in a very different way than your peers at a traditional US institution. So one of the other things to talk about is, let's say perhaps you've never traveled internationally before. Well, we can help you out with that. The three of us in the admissions office here in the US will do what's called group flight. We will not buy your ticket for you, but we'll say, hey, we're going to be on these flights leaving out of perhaps LA, Denver, and New York. And if you'd like help navigating that experience, then you can meet with us on those flights, meet with about 20 or so other students that are going to each particular location, and have a bit of a mini adventure to fly over to Zurich together, where we will meet with my colleagues on campus and have rented some charter buses to help us get directly to campus. So we will also help you specifically with your application process for your student visa once you're admitted. So there's no situation where you're going to be totally underwater and have no assistance with any of that stuff. We'll help you guide every step of the way to making sure that you can get to campus very easily. We've also never had a US student been denied a visa. We're very proud of our relationship with the Swiss government and immigration authorities. So they know that when we admit a student, that's a person they want in their country. So the benefit of that is also we've been in person this whole time. As I'd mentioned, the Swiss are very rules oriented, which means that they're really good at handling situations like COVID. They've been very listed as one of the top safest countries in the world, according to the World Health Organization and several other types of places like that. And what that means is that we've never had an interruption in our student experience, and that we've been able to be in person this whole time. So health and safety is a really big thing in Switzerland. We're able to take care of our students very well. That's a bit of a brief introduction to Franklin itself, so we can continue moving forward and address any questions you might have.
Right, so I don't think Will has joined, but this is his slide, so we'll leave it up here for a minute. I do believe that, we talked a little bit about application systems. So I do want to say that Goldsmiths is on a system called UCAS, which is kind of like the common app of the UK. So same thing, you kind of fill out one application, you can send that out to several universities in the UK. Unfortunately, I don't feel qualified to talk any more about that. So I'm sure he'll have his Zoom room later. So if you are here specifically to talk about school in the UK, I'm sure he'll be able to help with that. Okay, so that was it. So now we can use, I'm not sure what time it is, but we can use the rest of our time now just to talk about any specific questions that have come up.
So may I just ask for clarification, is Goldsmiths not an American university?
Correct, not an American university.
Okay, so at your two institutions, there would not really be any French students or Swiss students, is that correct? Or there might be some?
Oh yeah, we have at AUP about 15% of our students come from France.
Okay, and similar at Franklin?
Absolutely. So as I'd mentioned before, about half of our students come from over 60 countries. So yep. We definitely have an international population, but this is taking an experience within the American liberal arts curriculum, right? So everybody has to speak English, but they are coming from all over the globe.
Okay. So when students are a long way from home, and it might be Thanksgiving break or Christmas break, and let's say they're not able to come back, what is the experience for them then?
Yeah, so because we're on that more American semester system, that means that they do have that long break in between semesters. So it is pretty almost a month, right? So I do believe that most students they go back over that time. But if they're not, their housing's available all throughout the winter, so that's fine. But I would say almost all of our students do go home. Thanksgiving, we do not have a Thanksgiving break. So that probably is the one caveat to having the American schedule. But we do have a really fantastic Thanksgiving dinner at AUP for all of our students that are sort of feeling that homesickness. But I will say, just in general, to touch on student support a bit, is that, and I'm sure Franklin's the same, I mean, we understand that the majority of our students are coming from outside the country, right? So sometimes they're arriving never having left the country before. Maybe they don't know anybody in our respective countries. So we have designed our orientation experience to be much more intensive than it would be in the US, right? So we help them with the logistics, like getting their French bank account set up, their French cell phone, their Metro card. They tour Paris, they tour campus. But then there's also lots of opportunities for them to interact with other incoming students, start to build those bonds, those relationships. So for example, we do a boat party along the Seine every orientation. That's wildly popular. We take them on a trip during orientation where I think pre-COVID, they went to Burgundy and they did wine tastings and visited cathedrals. And so before classes even started, most had already found like a core group of friends that they really connected with. And then they're also assigned a student advisor for that entire first year, just to help them with more of those like logistical day-to-day, how do I get around in France? How do I navigate the French grocery store? All those types of things, so that there is that support just kind of built in.
And similarly at Franklin, our orientation process is about a week long. So you'll be given lots of opportunities to learn what you need to know to be in a new country, a new culture, but also have fun things interspersed in there, like seeing the Roman bridges or swimming in the lake, lots of different fun things to really get you acclimated to a new experience. So you're not moving in day one and then having classes day two. You have lots of opportunities to really get rid of the jet lag and get to know fellow students. And to answer your question specifically about, well, what do students do? Well, our on-campus housing does shut down like other US schools during the wintertime. So during that break, students can't really be in their room. So if they can't go home, it's very common to have, for example, your roommate be from Spain and say, hey, just come home with me and meet my family that whole time. They call it the Franklin family for a reason. And it's really one of those things where going to a university abroad, you do develop those relationships very, very strongly. And commonly amongst alumni, I hear all the time, anywhere I go in the world, I have a place to stay. So you, especially being at a small institution where you're sort of forced to interact with people from all over the globe, it really does give you these senses of community, and that once again, by the time you get to that break, you're already going to be a professional world traveler. So you're going to be able to navigate those areas around the world. And honestly, there are lots of people that decide that they don't want to come home to the US during that period of time because they want to go explore Vienna or other places. So yeah, I met a young man who only spent a semester at Franklin, and he traveled to almost 30 countries during his time abroad. So it's very easy to get around and navigate those types of things. Don't feel like if you go to a university abroad, you're going to be stuck there by any means. In fact, it gives you a platform to really go and explore the world in a greater capacity, I think.
Okay, we are almost at time, but I see some students on this call, and I just want to give a last call for questions from students. You can just unmute yourself and ask a question.
I was actually wondering if, like, I know in American universities you can like have gap years and like your spot is still there. Do you guys like support gap years?
Yep, we do. You can apply to us and then defer your admission, do a gap year somewhere else, or you can apply somewhere else, defer your admission, do a gap year with us. And I think Franklin's the same way.
Exactly the same, yes. Mm-hmm.
I had a question about your medical system.
Yeah.
So if you're going to try to get to the career path of, let's say, a psychiatrist, how would the degree that you got in that foreign country transfer over to getting that doctorate in the United States?
It's a great question. So basically, we have a pre-medical track on our campus that will help you with advisement, choosing specific courses to prepare you for things like the MCAT that will allow you for admission to local universities in the United States. So basically, because we are accredited in both the US and in Switzerland, that degree that you have is going to be equal to any that you would get in North America, which means that when you graduate, you can then take the MCAT and then apply for medical programs in the United States. So we will help you train your way to get to where you need to be.
Well, I just want to thank you both so much. These programs sound amazing. And I invite any students to also check in at your college tables from 11 to 1. So it looks like we have a 15-minute break, and the college tables will open up at 11 a.m. and then another round of workshops beginning at 1:15, I believe. So thank you very much, panelists and students.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.